Hello and welcome to Classic Vinyl Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Justin. I'm here with my other host, Tyler. And today we've got another member with us, my son, Austin, which he's been here for us on a couple of other episodes, I think.
At least Quadrophenia.
And Love,
And
I
Love.
believe.
Yeah.
But today he's here for us to do another album review of The Doors, their fourth studio album, The Soft Parade, we're going to do today. So let me give you a little history on The Doors first. So the Doors were formed in Los Angeles, California in 1965. Now, Jim Morrison, obviously the lead singer of the Doors, knew Ray Manzarek from UCLA Film School, and they met up later, and Jim told Ray he'd been writing some lyrics. He sang Moonlight Drive to Ray, and they decided to form a band because of that meeting. And of course, the Doors are formed by Jim Morrison on vocals, Ray Manzarek on keyboards, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and John Densmore on drums. Now, Jim Morrison actually came up with the band name, The Doors, from the Aldous Huxley book, The Doors of Perception. Doors have been described as a lot of different kinds of music. It's really kind of hard to categorize them, but I mean, rock, jazz, psychedelic. I mean, you've got Morrison's baritone and dark eroticism and pseudo-poetic lyrics. I mean,
it's church music.
Yeah, something like that.
That's why they have an organ.
It's definitely an interesting band. I think one thing with the Doors is most people seem to either really love them or really hate them, and I think the organ is the one thing that really turns a lot of people off. It's what I enjoy about them and what I like about the sound, but the Doors are kind of hit or miss for people. Initially, the Doors were a house band for the LA club London Fog, and then later became the house band for the Whiskey A Go-Go, famously on the Sunset Strip. They were signed by Elektra Records in August of 1966. Their debut self-titled album was released in 1967. It reached number 2 in the charts. It went 4 times platinum in the U.S., and it actually had their most successful single the band has ever had, Light My Fire, as well. So Strange Days, which was their second album, reached number 3. Waiting for the Sun, which was their third album, reached number 1. Soft Parade, which is the album we're doing today, reached number 6. And this album we're doing today, and we'll get a little more into it, is definitely a softer album. And it has a lot of strings, a lot of brass, but it has become a cult classic among Doors fans. Some people really love this album. I've read a lot of forums and stuff where people put this as the album they like least, and some people it's their favorite album. Some people it falls in between. Morrison Hotel, their fifth album, reached number 4. LA Woman, their last final album, at least with Morrison as the singer, reached number 9. All albums reached platinum, but LA Woman is 3 times platinum. So they released 6 total studio albums with Jim Morrison, 2 studio albums after his death with Robbie Krieger and Ray Manzarek taking on the vocal duties. Jim released 1 poetry album, sort of. They released it after his death. It was called American Prayer. It did go platinum as well in 1978. The other Doors put music to his poetry reading. Multiple live albums, compilation albums, greatest hits, box sets, 40th anniversary sets, 50th anniversary sets, etc., etc. I have all of them for some reason. If they come out with 60th anniversary, I guess I'll start collecting them as well.
You're going to have to get a storage unit.
Yeah, probably. Only 2 songs of the Doors hit number 1, Light My Fire and Hello, I Love You. But they did have 13 other singles released that charted in the top 100. They're the first American band ever to have 8 consecutive gold albums in a row. They've sold over 100 million albums worldwide. And of course, Jim Morrison died of heart failure in Paris in July of 1971.
Allegedly.
Yeah, now the death, as bad as it was and things like that, and put an end to their recording career, it certainly enhanced the band's popularity. I mean, it martyred the band, let's put it that way.
Well, and they really whisked him into that grave so quick, we don't know who's buried.
We don't. So the Doors movie was released in 1991, the Oliver Stone movie, which really seen the Doors have a resurgence in popularity. Now, that movie, anyone close to the Doors did not like the movie or think it portrayed Jim correctly, but I think if you put it into context, it did a good job of just bringing the Doors to people again. It's one of the things, not to mention my dad making me listen to the Doors music all the time, but that movie really brought me in as a young kid to really love the Doors. I like the movie just simply because of that, but I think as far as the truthfulness of it, it's a movie. And not only that, it's an Oliver Stone movie, but
yeah.
The band was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. Yeah, so do you want to get to the album review?
I do.
And now it's time for the album review.
So before we get to this album, let's go round the circle here, Tyler. What is your history with this Soft Parade album? How many songs off this album have you heard before today?
I thought possibly 3, but I was wrong. I've only heard 2.
And I'm guessing that is Touch Me and the Soft Parade.
That's correct.
Yes. And you probably haven't heard the Soft Parade that often.
I haven't even probably heard the entire song.
But you were familiar with at least the first of it, the spoken part, right?
Oh, I love the first part of it, the spoken part.
So you, Austin, I know you know the album because I've played it for you a few times. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, a few times.
You were raised right.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's an album that I know well. I've listened to it a lot, definitely before this, but yeah, an album that I was definitely familiar with before this.
Yeah, it's a good album. Of course, the Doors are one of my favorite bands. I mean, anybody that listens to this podcast knows that I absolutely adore the Beatles. The Doors are a distant second, and they kind of break rules for me just like the Beatles do, is because I generally like guitar-driven music, and the Doors are really nothing of the sort. They're, if anything, driven heavily by organ, and this album in particular has a lot of strings and brass on it. So let's get the history of the Soft Parade, the album. It's obviously the Doors' 4th studio album. It was released on July 18th of 1969. It was recorded at Elektra Studios in Hollywood, California, and produced by Paul Rothchild. Now, Paul Rothchild actually produced all the Doors albums with the exception of their final one with Morrison, L.A. Woman. Now, like I stated earlier, it peaked at number 6 on the U.S. Billboard charts, but did not do well in the UK like their first 3 albums had, and it did not even chart in the UK. And I don't know if that's because this album was such a departure from their sound or what, but it didn't do well there. Certified platinum by the RIAA in the US with over 1 million in sales. Now, this is a pretty short album. It's got 9 songs. It runs just over a half an hour long, but it does feature one of their longest songs. The album title song, The Soft Parade, is almost 9 minutes long. Like I said, the album was a complete departure from their first 3 albums. The first 3 albums are pretty dark, and this one's a little bit different. And of course, what makes this especially different is a lot of these songs contain orchestration on them. So they feature brass and string arrangements, which was the very first for them. And Jim Morrison also with his album was a lot less involved with the songwriting process simply because of the personal issues he was having. And those personal issues were mostly he was a drunk.
Well, that'll happen.
That'll do it. So you've got 5 of the 9 albums on this were written by Robbie Krieger. So it's the first time, he'd always contributed a song or two, but not to the extent he did on this album.
Yeah, he really had to step it up.
He did, yeah. Although the album did feature a top 10 hit, which was Touch Me, which I think is probably the song most people are familiar with off of this. Critics and fans did not like the album at the time, and many still consider this the band's weakest album, but like I stated earlier, some consider it their strongest just because it's different and it's become that cult classic.
You just need to picture this cute little old lady with blue hair named Mrs. Baumgartner sitting at that organ rocking away, and that's going to change it all for you.
I don't even know what you mean.
Me either.
So, like we were talking, Morrison was drinking heavily during the making of this album and acted as though he didn't want to be in the studio at the time. I think the vocals are good in it, but obviously where he wasn't as involved in the songwriting process. He was spending most of his time on all his other passions, poetry, filmmaking, etc. And because of the problems with Morrison and Paul Rothchild, the producer, had a severe cocaine problem at the time. This album took almost 9 months to complete. And I know you and I, Tyler, have talked about it a number of times. Is you go back to the 60s, a lot of these bands were churning out albums quick. And so 9 months to complete an album in the late 60s was not a quick album.
Especially when they're powdering their noses so much. I mean, come on, guys. What's the point of doing all that smack if it's not going to get stuff done?
Good point. So this was also the first album for the Doors to feature writing credits to individuals instead of just to the Doors. Now, this was because Jim Morrison thought it was better to tell listeners who was saying what, because I think a few of the songs like Tell All the People and things like that, he didn't want to be associated with being known as the one writing them. Do you want to get to side 1?
Let's do it.
Side 1.
Okay, so side 1 opens up with Tell All the People, and right away we get hit with orchestration on this thing. This is a song written by Robbie Krieger, of course, sang by Jim Morrison. Now, this was an outtake from their previous album, their third studio album, Waiting for the Sun. It's got Harvey Brooks on bass, which a lot of the Doors albums, Ray had always played bass, piano live, but they always brought in bass players to play in the studios. So this is the third of 4 singles released off the album. The B-side of this was another song on this album called Easy Ride. This one reached only number 57 on the charts. So after listening to Tell All the People, Austin, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think if you know the Doors, it's definitely a weird song to start off with. If you listen to any of their other albums, it's definitely a lot different than their previous stuff. I think it's got a lot of horns and strings, and it's great sounding, but it's definitely a stark contrast to their previous stuff, and then even their stuff in the future if you're a Doors fan. But overall, I think it's a great song.
What about you, Tyler?
It's a very mellow song. I was surprised at how mellow of a song this was opening up the album. It's a song about the starting of a movement. But even though he's saying, tell all the people to follow me down, he's not saying that we're going to necessarily incite a riot. It's a good song with a good message about, we're going to get something going, but it's not going to result in violence. Something that I really liked about this song is the piano playing, and then the horns. They added a certain fanfare to it. It's really fun to listen to. Also, Jim Morrison, he uses a wide range in his voice in this song, and I thought that was noteworthy. What are your thoughts on it, Justin?
I think Austin kind of hit it on the head. If you're first buying this album and you're a Doors fan and you've owned their first 3 and you throw this on, you're probably like, what in the hell is going on here? Is this the Doors?
Oh, yeah, I was mad.
Yeah. It's got the standard things in it. Although it was written by Robbie Krieger, some of the lyrics remind me of Morrison. Follow me across the sea where milky babies seem to be. That seems like a Morrison lyric. It's straight off into the heavy orchestration. You've got the standard old crooning Morrison vocal, which I think that's the best thing about this song. I would like it guitar driven, and one thing we did do is we did listen to the 50th anniversary edition that has a few of these songs that are heavily orchestrated on this, that are just the Doors before the orchestration was put on, and I really enjoy it. But like I said, they break all the rules for me on this because I like this album, and it's a mood album for me. It's not one I can listen to a bunch. I would rather it be guitar driven, but it's got a nice piano in it. It's got a short little guitar solo in it that isn't bad at all. It's pure Doors, but it's not what people are used to hearing on the radio. So if you're first getting into the Doors albums, this one can be kind of shocking to you, I would say. So let's move on to song 2, which is, I think, undoubtedly the most well-known song off of this album. It's Touch Me. This one was written by Robbie Krieger and sang by Jim Morrison, of course. This was the first single released off the album, and they actually released this single in December of '68. So they actually released this almost 7 months prior to the album coming out, which was kind of strange for the Doors. The B-side of the single was Wild Child, which is another song on this album. You've got Curtis Amy in here playing the saxophone solo, which is kind of interesting. Curtis Amy has played with Carole King, Lou Rawls, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, among a ton of others. You've got Harvey Brooks on bass guitar again, Paul Harris with the orchestral arrangements. So this song reached number 3 on the Billboard charts. It did reach number 1 on the U.S. Cashbox Top 100, however, and it did reach number 1 in Canada. Once again, it did not chart in the U.K., so only the Brits did not like this album, and they did not like this single. The orchestration, I guess, was too much for them.
Well, they don't like being touched.
That could be it, too.
Okay.
So the single certified gold in the U.S. with over 1 million in sales of the single alone. Robbie Krieger has stated that the song was originally written as Hit Me, as the title, based on fights that he had with his girlfriend, but apparently Morrison changed the lyrics to Touch Me, and many people thought this song was about masturbation.
I can see why.
Yeah, I can't imagine why.
But if you change the lyrics from Touch Me to Hit Me, that's a very different song.
Yeah, it is, but also Touch Me doesn't sound like masturbation to me because it's like a directive. He's telling someone to touch him.
Well, exactly. It's not masturbation when someone else is doing the touching.
Yeah, come on, now touch me, baby. Mm-hmm. Unless he's singing to himself. I guess if he's in the bathroom mirror, then...
Jim Morrison, hey, I wouldn't hold it against him.
Well, other than it's not his lyrics, let's remember that.
Oh, yeah, Robbie.
And at the end of the song, if you know the Doors or if you don't, you ought to pay attention because there's right at the very end, it says stronger than dirt. And that's actually a line from an Ajax commercial that was popular at the time. So just a little hidden gem about that one. So, Austin, I know you know Touch Me, but after listening to it with the purpose of reviewing it, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's continuing the album off strong with another song that's written by Robbie Krieger. I think it showcases his lyrics and his songwriting abilities very well. Again, continuing with like the horns and the strings, definitely love that. And then also something a little unexpected was the saxophone solo in this. It just kind of hits you out of nowhere and kind of leads up to the end of the song. Great saxophone solo. I definitely love that. And it's something that if you're a Doors fan, you probably wouldn't really expect out of a Doors album or a Doors song. So overall, a great song, and I like it. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, it's not your typical dark Doors feeling or theme that we're used to. This is a real peppy, upbeat song. Heavy percussion song too. I mean, they're just really rocking out with the drums in this one. I like listening to the lyrics of it. I'm the lyric guy. He says, this is a song about enduring love and that love's being stronger than their fights. He's like, what was that promise that we made? So is he referring to like marital vows that they had made? Like, oh, well, I promised to love you through all this. Basically saying that, I mean, this is where I'm like, okay, so if he's talking about, hey, hit me, babe. Like, go ahead. You know, you want to hurt me, you want to punch me, go ahead. I love you more than you can hit me. That's a kind of poetic love message, I think. Sometimes violence in love can be toxic. Coupled with the music, I just think that's a real beautiful message. So what are your thoughts on this one, Justin?
Well, this is probably the one song that I shouldn't say I've heard the most because I've devoured the Doors albums for years. But I mean, obviously, as far as radio play, this song is probably the only song off the album that gets any radio play.
Oh, without a doubt. And it's all over classic radio stations.
Yeah, I love the intro with Ray's organ. This is one of the other songs we listened to stripped down off the 50th anniversary, and I love this song stripped down. This one, to me, as much as I'm used to it for years and years with the orchestration, it's so much better without it. It's got decent bass in it and a decent guitar, but you don't really hear it as much until you listen to that stripped version, and then the bass is really heavy in the stripped version. The one thing that sticks out to me is the great drumming. John Densmore is highly underrated, and his jazz style of drumming is just amazing. This has just got too many horns in it for me, and I've never completely loved this song. It's been on my lower tier of Doors songs for a lot of years, even though it was the most popular and still is the most popular off this album. It's just, this song has never really done it for me, but I don't dislike it. So it moves us on to the third song, Shaman's Blues. Now, this one was one of the songs that Morrison did write. We've got Harvey Brooks on bass guitar again, and at the time, or through Morrison's life, he was obsessed with shamans. A shaman is a person who can cross over into the spiritual world, generally in the Native American world, right? Funny is that the name of this song is Blues because the music is not the blues. It's not your standard blues whatsoever. It's written in the chords of G minor, F, and C minor. Has nothing to do with the blues, but it is what it is, you know. The song is basically Jim singing about looking into the mind of a shaman. And the song definitely draws a stark contrast to the rest of the songs on the album because obviously there's no orchestration on this, no horns, no strings. It's the Doors, it's the guitars, it's the bass, it's the organ, it's the great drumming, and this really harkens back to the feel of their three earlier albums to me, and that's why this song, in my opinion, is one of the stronger ones. What are your thoughts on Shaman's Blues, Austin?
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think if you know the Doors or you know Jim Morrison at all, I think you can definitely tell that this song is written by him. It has him written all over it. Just listening to the lyrics, you can definitely tell that's something that Jim Morrison wrote. The other thing that I love about this song is just all of the instruments in it. I feel like at some point in the song, each instrument gets their own little section. You know, there's great bass line. You get some organ or some keyboard in there. You get some drums, just everything. And then pairing that with Morrison's vocals and lyrics, it just makes for an excellent song that, like you said, definitely draws influence from their earlier stuff, you can tell. Overall, a great song. What do you think, Tyler?
This is another first for me, and I got lost.
Which that's the point of this podcast most of the time, right? Is not only we're sitting down to listen to music, but it's me introducing you to music that you haven't heard before and seeing what your initial reaction is.
Yeah, I probably don't even need to mention that this is a first for me, although it's noteworthy that this one, it just threw me for a loop. And that's Jim Morrison for you. I mean, going from Robbie Krieger songs especially Touch Me. I mean, I really got into the lyrics of that one and started to understand it. I don't think I even listened to the lyric of this song, because this song, there was an imagery that came with the music that reminded me of a teeter-totter or a seesaw on the playground, 1-2, 1-2 kind of beat to it. And the way that it kind of rocked back and forth, it was almost like the music was mirroring itself, and it was really weird, and that distracted me, so I didn't get any of the lyrics, which I don't think I would have got them anyway, because it's Jim Morrison. I'm gonna have to listen to this probably 20 times before I understand what he's trying to say.
You may have to listen to it more times than that to understand what he's trying to say.
He's a very deep poet. I mean, this is real Doors stuff, so I'm sure, the big true Doors fans are listening to this are like, oh yes, this is what we have come to love. And I'm just like lost. Although, excellent guitar work. I'm glad that the guitar came back. Like Austin was saying, every instrument got a chance to showcase their talents. And I mean, this is a good talent show song. Not that I think anybody should play it in a talent show, but this was a song that Jim Morrison's like, hey, everybody gets to show their talents. Well, how about you bring us back to some sanity, Justin, and give us your opinion?
This has always been one of my favorite Doors songs. I like the imagery in it. You've got Jim's lyrics. Will you stop and think and wonder just what you'll see out in the train yards, Nurse's Penitentiary? I mean, it doesn't even need to mean anything. It just needs to sound cool, right? Mm-hmm. It's got a great organ intro, kind of spooky, the same old Doors sound you hear on that. The drumming, I love John Densmore's drumming, and I can't believe he's not put up in there with some of the better drummers, and I guess it's the kind of music, but if you really listen to his drumming, he's all over the place, and he's great. It's got a good pace. This reminds me of their earlier stuff. This could have been on Strange Days easily. Guitar licks in this are perfect. The guitar, to me, through the whole song, and when you listen to it, really think of this, but it sounds like the guitar is crying to me the whole time. It's got a small organ solo, then a small guitar solo, which are both great, and I love the outro guitar solo to this song. So one of my favorites on the album. I've always loved Shaman's Blues. So that moves us to the next song, Do It. Now this one is a song on the album that was co-written by Morrison and Krieger, and of course sang by Jim Morrison. You've got Harvey Brooks on bass guitar on this one again, which listen to him on this because I think he did an amazing job. Now this song has been called Calling for the Youngsters of the Day to Do Something. Kind of your movement songs, I guess you would say, somewhat in the element of other popular songs at time, like Ohio by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, or Volunteers by Jefferson Airplane. Please, please listen to the children. You are the ones who will rule the world. This was the B-side to the Run and Blue single. So Austin, what are your thoughts on Do It?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good song. Probably not one of my favorites. One thing I did like about it is the bass and guitar, especially at the beginning, just kind of working together, almost kind of taking turns. It's almost like they're talking to each other. I really like that. And then I also do like the classic keyboard sound. It really kind of takes you back to a lot of the earlier Doors stuff, back to their roots. And then kind of like mirroring what you said, it does seem like a message that would make a huge hit song at the time, kind of like some of the other songs that you mentioned were the larger hit songs that were calling for youngsters of the day to kind of get up and do things and make changes. So it's kind of interesting that it didn't end up being one of those larger hit songs, even though it does have one of those messages that a lot of those hit songs of the day did have. Overall good song, but definitely not one of my favorites. What about you, Tyler? What did you think?
Oh, once again, we have a song here that is not inciting a riot. However, it is telling people to rise up and to do something. So it really hails back to that first song of the album. What is it?
Tell all the people.
Tell all the people. That's one. Yeah, it very reminiscent of that. The lyrics, please, please listen to me, children. You are the ones who will rule the world. Yeah, I mean, that's a very direct thing. Like, you got prepared to take on the responsibility of running things, because these older generations, they get older, they retire. You have to be able to shoulder it up underneath it and carry it on. Very different kind of Doors song. I liked it. This is another one, first time listening to it, and I guess I understand Krieger's lyric writing a little bit more than I can understand Morrison, so maybe that's why I liked it. What are your thoughts on this one, Justin?
Well, I think they missed a good chance in the title of the song. This could have been a sexual song. I mean, considering it's called Do It. I mean, why didn't it just call it Listen to the Children or something like that. But this isn't one of my favorites. This is kind of album filler on this for me, but it's a Doors song I don't skip because I don't skip many Doors songs. So I do like the guitar and organ and the bass in it, like Austin says, are good in it. I think the best thing in this song is amazing drumming. Now, this song doesn't have any strings or horns on it, but to me, it wouldn't hurt or affected it either way. Whereas songs like Touch Me and Tell All the People, I think, are much better without them. I don't think this song would have suffered one way or the other. The vocals on this are strong, but they're a little echoey on the original version. It's an okay song. It's not my favorite. That moves us on to Easy Ride, the last song on side one. Now, this one is another one written and sang by Jim Morrison. You've got Doug Lubon on bass guitar on this one, which he had played on a lot of the earlier Doors albums. Now, it's been stated this song is about a distant upper-class girl who Jim is trying to seduce. The Easy Ride probably refers to sex, so I don't know why they didn't call this one Do It. But they could have. Or the transition to sex, the seduction itself. Sheer confidence tells him it will get her, and it will be an easy ride to do so. I can't imagine why he would think so, but I'm sure at the time of being a rock star, he didn't have to try too hard to seduce too many young girls if they knew who he was. And some have also said that Easy Ride was basically an allusion to the movie that was really popular at the time, Easy Rider. I don't know if that's true or not, but what do you think of Easy Ride, Austin?
I think this is one of the songs on the album that I might consider an album filler. It's not one of the strongest songs to me, but one of the things that I do have to say about it is just listening to the lyrics of this, you can definitely tell that it's a Morrison song. Has him written all over it, and the lyrics are very strong on it, like a lot of the Morrison songs, but it seems a little out of place for the album and just kind of seems like a filler. What do you think, Tyler?
So this was a fun song. I got a big kick out of Easy Ride. The concept that, this is a song about leading up to sex or the seduction of it. Jim Morrison, he's such a cocky rock star that I'm sure it comes so easy to him. Life's a lot harder for a hobo, when you're trying to seduce an upper class woman. It just doesn't go so well. I have a very different way of understanding, this song. It's just a fun ride. And I kind of hope it's a reference to Easy Rider, the movie. But then again, it just seems like it's all about, hey, I'm going to get in there with this high-class lady. Good for him. So all in all, I had a good time with it. What are your thoughts on Easy Ride, Justin?
Well, I'm glad you liked it, because it doesn't fall in my top favorite songs on this album by any means. It's kind of got that carnival feeling, which I don't like, and I knew right away you would like it. It does have good guitar work in it. It's got decent bass, really good drums. I do like the lyrics again, costume of control, excitement soon unfolds. It's just that Morrison, what do you call it, gibberish, or it might mean something special. It may not. Who knows? It's Morrison,
It's his poetry, man.
Yeah, no strings or horns on this one again, but just like Do It, I think it would have been fine with them because I don't think it would have improved or made it any different. So not my favorite song, but so that finishes up side one of the album. We're going to do side two of the album next week along with our album rating. So please join us. But until then, we appreciate you listening to us. And until next time, we'll see you later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.